why have you opted for a subject like economics and IIT graduate opting for economics?
Why electoral bonds are criticized?
How India is faring as far as economic diplomacy is concerned?
There has been a change in government in Maldives.
Sir.
So why it has become a challenge for India now?
May I come in, sir?
Yes, come in.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Please be seated.
Thank you, sir.
Please give a brief introduction about yourself.
My name is Roopak Sharma. My father was in the army. I lived in 6 different states and 8 different schools. I went for my graduation to IIT Delhi. I did my mechanical engineering there. I graduated in 2016. Thereafter, I worked in 3 different companies. One was an MNC and 2 different startups.
Why did you quit your job?
So, I wanted to pursue civil services full time. First of all, I tried to manage it with the job, but then it got a little hectic and it was showing on my physical and mental health. So I decided to take a break and give my complete effort to civil services.
God forbid if you don't make it eventually at the end of the day, what is your fallback plan?
So I can go back to the corporate sector. I have good experience. I have good network. So I can always go back there.
So getting back is not an issue.
It should not be an issue, sir. I'm quite confident about that.
You are a man from Delhi.
Yes, so my hometown is Lucknow. But the most I've lived in a town is Delhi.
Delhi only. Okay. My first question is, why have you opted for a subject like economics and IIT graduate opting for economics?
So I enjoyed my time in IIT. And as I said, I started my civil services preparation after 3 years graduating from IIT. So I tried to figure out what would add most value to me. And I figured going for civil services, economics is a subject which is currently of great importance, and its importance is only going to get higher as the Indian economy grows. Besides that, sir, my personal preference was economics because I had done a few courses in college and I found the subject very interesting.
That's good. You have stayed in Delhi for a long time. There is one problem amongst various other problems Delhi is facing is the problem of slums. So why slums is a major issue in Delhi?
So firstly, the reason is a lot of migrants come to Delhi for jobs. The fundamental reason behind that is we're not able to generate enough jobs in densely populated states like Uttar Pradesh and Bihar. So a lot of people come here. The second reason is the property rates, both for buying as well as rent, are fairly high in all metropolitan cities in India. Therefore, the migrants who have very low earnings are forced to live in slums.
Suppose tomorrow you are made administrator of Delhi, how would you deal with problems of slum localities?
First of all, sir, I'll try to encourage or push the schemes which try to build affordable housing. Like PM Awas Yojana is trying to do that already. So I'll try to allocate as much funds to that as possible and try to ensure that the work gets expedited. Secondly, I'll try to promote CSR. I've seen in HUL where I worked, companies do a lot of CSR projects, and a part of it is also affordable housing. So these are the 2 main pillars I would like to.
What do you mean by the word CSR?
Corporate social responsibility, sir.
When does it happen?
So it happens, it's mandated by legislation in India, where every company has to spend 2% of its profits on socially responsible projects, which can range from cleanliness, affordable housing, education, these kind of.
You said every company, irrespective of its earnings, irrespective of its turnover, or there's some restrictions also, some conditions also attached to that?
Sir, I'm not very sure, but I don't think there is any cap on earnings. It's just that the company should be making profits.
You must have heard about the issues of landfills in Delhi also.
Landfills. Yes.
Where are the landfills located in Delhi and around Delhi?
So there's a Ghazipur area where the biggest landfill is located. There's a mountain of garbage basically.
What the government has been doing about it?
I'm not very sure about the exact steps that the
Now,
government.
you tell me how the waste in landfills can be reused.
So firstly, first step that is necessary in any waste management is segregation of waste. So if that is done, then things become much easier. For example, organic waste can be used to generate biofuels, biogas, which can subsequently be used to generate energy. Whereas plastic can be recycled to a very high percentage. I'm guessing it's around over 80% that plastic can be recycled.
Good, good. What do you mean by waste to energy?
Yes, so waste to energy is another way where we can recycle our waste. It's basically converting waste into energy in different forms. Just as I said, organic waste can be converted into biofuels. Then basically every form of waste can be also incinerated as the last resort. If you burn the waste and use it to run a turbine, you can generate electricity from that.
Thank you.
Roopak, can you please define rights for me? What are rights?
So rights are things that we are allowed to do within the purview of the law.
Or it is the demand?
No, sir. There is always a boundary in which rights should be exercised, and laws are what form that boundary. So,
Okay. So, keeping in mind the rights of the communities, especially LGBTQIA+, right? And it was, of course, the matter was adjudicated in the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court, of course, refused to acknowledge the rights of marriage. Now, what is your opinion that whether the marriage must be recognized as the right for individual? Because, of course, you have identified given rights, you have something called the transgender community. So, why the rights related to marriage has not been recognized, and what is your opinion in this regard?
sir, marriage is not just an individual right; it's a social institution, and especially in the context of India, all religions place a very important role to marriage in their context. Therefore, Supreme Court has opined that it's a social issue, and therefore interfering it with it just on the basis of individuals' rights would not be the right thing to do.
What is your, I mean, in the idea of progressive society like India, what is your opinion that whether this should be given marriage right? They, of course, transgender have been acknowledged or they have been given rights, right? But there are other communities which are, of course, after Navtej Singh Johar judgment, you might have read about it. But what about marriage right? Right? They don't even have right to adopt children, right to co-own the property, right? And also they don't have right to marriage. So these are the basic requirements and basic necessity. Now I'm just talking about in the perspective of humane or the values of human society. Now, do you really think that India has to be disregarding the aspiration of the people, because that is how is considered to be the foundation of our rights? Rights are nothing but they are the viable and just demands of the individual. So do you think that this should be rectified?
Certainly, sir. As you mentioned, adoption, divorce, all these rights are not currently being practiced by LGBTQ community. My personal opinion is that instead of interfering with the marriage institution, we can have a civil union instead of marriage and enact a new law which covers the LGBTQ community.
Excellent. Now, because you are also happen to be a student of economics, now populism politics is of course plaguing the nation. In fact, the chairman of the Finance Commission also expressed his apprehension about the freebie culture that is of course plaguing the nation right now. Happen to have witnessed Sri Lankan crisis. So what we can learn from the crisis that happened in Sri Lanka? What India can learn?
So specifically about Sri Lanka,
yes.
It was populism that brought down their economy. So India firstly should learn that we should build our policies with long-term considerations, not just immediate elections, both in state and at the center. That is the first thing we can learn. And secondly, another big problem was their abrupt shift to organic farming. So we should do proper due diligence. Even if it's a good policy measure, we should also always try to work out the ground realities first and then do implementation.
Okay. My last question. why electoral bonds are criticized?
Sir, electoral bonds are criticized because they reduce transparency in electoral funding. Sir, the details of the donors are not in the public domain, so you don't really know which are the largest donors for a particular political
Details
party.
are not disclosed because it may suffer or it may undergo some kind of vendetta if the donors details are disclosed. Any government whosoever is going to come in power, he may sometimes victimize the person who is going to donate it. Now my question is, there is, of course, because you are an economics student, and there is an apprehension related to the Companies Act, the amendment in the Companies Act which has criticized the aspiration of electoral bonds. Why these things have been criticized? You have any idea? Have you read about it?
Not specifically about the Companies Act, but the lack of disclosure is the main issue.
That's it, Roopak. Thank you.
Roopak, you have interest in Indian startup ecosystem.
Yes, ma'am.
What kind of impact will G20 summit that has happened in India have on Indian startup ecosystem?
Ma'am, G20 was very strongly emphasized on the brand of India. So the meetings were held all over the country. Brand India was promoted. Different delegates were taken across the country. So I think that will help India, firstly, Indian startup ecosystem, by firstly bringing in foreign investment. So this year we see the funding to startups has dried a little bit. So with G20 behind us now, I feel that will go up in the coming years. That is one. Secondly, we also tried to have many meetings or working sessions related to economic issues, financial issues, and entrepreneurship as well.
You're a student of economics.
Yes, ma'am.
You must have studied Marx and Schumpeter. Have you?
Not in too much detail, but yes, ma'am, I have.
But they talk about decline of capitalism.
Right.
Do you know what they talk about? What do they say when they talk about decline of capitalism?
Certainly, ma'am. They emphasize on the evil aspect of capitalism. They say if capitalists exploit the working class, then it would lead to a violent revolution.
What are your views on this?
Ma'am, I feel globally it has proven that capitalist system is what has been successful in generating wealth, and provided that capitalism is conscious and ethical, then that it is a sustainable model. So if capitalist system ensures welfare of the workers, carries out CSR activities.
But you see, due to capitalism, we see rising inequalities,
right,
all across the world. So sooner or later, the fault lines will emerge.
Right, ma'am. Ma'am, yes, inequalities have risen, especially in developing countries, where only a section of society initially benefits from capitalism. But we've also seen, let's say, in Southeast Asian countries, where capitalism has succeeded in redistributing that wealth over time.
Okay. Roopak, would you agree with me if I say that cryptocurrency or bitcoins specifically are inherently deflationary in nature?
That's not necessarily true, because up until now, we have not allowed the use of bitcoins extensively in open markets for buying things, buying goods. But going ahead, if we allow that, then it would behave similar to the normal currencies that we use.
Okay, this time Nobel Prize in economics was given to a woman. Do you know her name?
The name seems to have slipped my mind, but yes, I know.
Do you know
her
about
work.
her work?
Yes, ma'am.
What has she talked about?
She's talked about how women's participation in labor force and wages that women have received has varied over the centuries. She has shown that using the data, how women's participation was fairly high before Industrial Revolution. Then it came down during the Industrial Revolution because the nature of the work changed.
Okay, my last question to you would be, they say in long run, we are all dead. Do you agree with this statement?
No, ma'am, I don't agree with that statement because...
Give me an economic answer as to why you don't agree with this statement.
Right, ma'am. Because, yes, short run is important. We need to...
Who are the propounders of long run?
Propounders of long run? Ma'am, classical economists propose that long run is what we should focus on, whereas Keynesians said that in long run we are all dead and therefore we should focus on...
And why you don't agree with it?
Ma'am, I don't agree because we should always have one eye on the short run, but the other eye should always be on the long run, because only if we think about the long run, then we can think about the larger picture, like where we want our economy to go. Should we stay agrarian? Should we move to the industrial sector? 30 years down the line, what should our economy be looking like? For example, today we are trying to push the emerging technologies. So that is something long run should look at.
Thank you.
Roopak, you are a mechanical engineer from one of the premier institutes of India, right?
Sir.
Why have you not opted a job in any of the core sectors, core engineering sectors? You have gone to HUL, then some startups.
Right, sir. Sir, I really enjoyed my mechanical engineering training. When I decided to sit for placements, HUL is what I have found to be a good mix of both managerial capabilities as well as core applications. So if I want to go in a little bit of detail, at HUL I worked in multiple factories and I worked on several core projects as well.
Okay, so
Yes,
you
sir.
were at production
Yes, sir.
ages also. Right, fine. So something from economics. Nowadays we have seen that the diplomacy is changing from the ideological diplomacy to economic diplomacy, right?
Right, sir.
How India is faring as far as economic diplomacy is concerned? Are we putting our interest on a table or not?
So certainly, I feel we are doing well on the economic diplomacy front. I'll give you a few examples. During Russia-Ukraine war, we decided to continue purchasing oil from Russia despite pressure from the West. That was considering the fact that oil prices were already high in the market and we were getting good discounts from Russia, which helped us keep our inflation low.
In economics, in classical theories, it is also said that markets have a self-correcting mechanism. But despite of that, we have seen markets failing several times. So why markets fail? What are the reasons behind it?
So markets fail because of the underlying assumptions in classical theory are not always true. For example, classical theorists believe that wages are perfectly variable, but that is not the case. In labor markets, wages are set as per labor contracts. And for example, there are stringent labor laws in India, which often hamper the free movement of the market.
Right. And who are the monetarists as far as economics is concerned?
So monetarists, the most prominent name being Milton Friedman, they argued that money is the most important factor in the economy, the money supply. That is what determines the price level and economic growth in the short as well as in the long run.
Right. When suppose you become a civil servant, right? Which kind of pension system will you opt for? The defined contributory kind of pension, yeah, defined benefit kind of pension. That is new pension or old pension? Which will be your preferred choice?
So my preferred choice will be the new pension scheme.
So what is the economics behind these pension schemes?
So as you said, the new pension scheme is contributory, where while you are working, you have to contribute a part of your salary to a fund, which is invested in diversified markets, and according to the returns earned on those funds, you are paid a pension. So that pension might not be fixed. It depends, it's a little variable depending on the returns earned on those funds. Whereas the old pension scheme, there was no contribution by the working person and entire payment was done by the government's budget. That was the main difference. And the reason I feel new pension scheme should be favored is because it reduces the burden on the exchequer. We already see 57 to 60% of our defense budget is spent on salaries and pensions, and only a very less than 30% we are able to spend on capital expenditure. So if we want to rationalize these things in the long run.
My last question to you is that you have been participating in some of the debates also, right?
Yes, sir.
You have been a speaker. So as per you, what should be some points of ethics that should be taken care while debating for a motion or against a motion? Ethical points of considerations.
Right, sir. The first and foremost would be the accuracy of our facts. We should be accurate with what we say, and we should also be accurate with what we are missing out. in news media we see these days that a lot of facts are conveniently missed out to portray a certain narrative.
Right.
That we should avoid. We should give the complete picture in whatever debates we undertake. Secondly, the kind of emotions we want to invoke in the listeners. Persuasive speaking can be a double-edged sword. So if a leader who has persuasive skills misuses it, then it can even lead to riots. So these are the two things we should keep in mind while
Sure.
making our points.
Sure. Thank you.
Roopak, there has been a change in government in Maldives.
Sir.
So why it has become a challenge for India now?
Right, sir. So recently, as you said, Mohammad Moizu has taken over as the new president of Maldives. And even during his campaigning period, he was supporting the India Out movement. Whereas the previous regime was of India First policy. And it is also said that the new dispensation is pro-China. So that creates concerns for India.
So do you think we should not get too much associated with the government in power in any country, because whenever there will be a change in government, it will lead to maybe some adverse consequences for India? Like, we should be engaged more in domestic politics of our neighboring countries or less?
Sir, my opinion is that we should actively engage with both parties or all parties in our neighborhood, especially in our neighborhood, because if we restrain, China is not going to restrain. It's going to take one side or both sides and try to ensure that the side which they favor comes to power.
Recently, there has been elections in Argentina, and a new president has taken charge, and he is known as the madman. So what is his philosophy?
Sir, I'm not very aware of.
You are a mechanical engineer. So we are hearing a lot about the EVs,
Right.
electric vehicles, and it is being cited as something that will help us in dealing with the pollution issue. But do you think EVs are actually that clean for environment?
Certainly, sir. They are way better than the IC engine vehicles we are using right now, because they do not directly burn the fuel. So in mechanical
So they are just changing the source of pollution, but I don't think they are actually helping in making it a cleaner environment.
Sir, you're right. They are changing the source of pollution if our electricity is coming from thermal power. From
Most
burning.
of it is coming from thermal power.
Right, sir. But again, we are trying to reduce that and move to solar power and wind energy. So,
what is the difference between phase down and phase out of coal?
Right, sir. So phase down is where we need to reduce coal in our energy mix gradually, whereas phasing out is a strict deadline by which we will completely.
Which side is India on?
India is on phasing downside because we have our developmental needs, economic growth needs.
Okay. Now, when we talk about FTAs, so India doesn't have a very good track record in making or taking benefit of FTAs that it has signed with various countries. So, is the problem with the FTAs or is the problem with us?
Sir, I think the problem was the way we negotiated those FTAs and the situation Indian economy was in when we negotiated those FTAs. Most of the FTAs we signed in were in 1990s or early 2000s. That was when Indian economy was still very small and our negotiation power was not that great. So that is why we had to, give more leeway to other countries, which led to our imports rising and exports not growing so much.
Okay. Now you also have interest in golf.
Yes, sir.
So I read somewhere that golf has too much walking.
Yes, sir.
To be a good game, and just enough game to spoil a good walk. So with what you agree more?
So it depends on your day. If you're playing well, then it's a good walk. And if you're not playing well, it seems like the longest walk you'll ever have.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Taking this golf forward, it is generally believed in our country that golf is played by only rich people in our country. So how could you develop the interest in such a rich game, which is for which we have to pay really very expensive? It's an expensive game. Buy a golf club, which is expensive. Equipments are expensive. Ball is expensive. When going to the golf club is expensive. So how do you explain that?
Sir, I come from a middle class background, but my father was in the Indian Army. So we are not very rich, but we have some good facilities in the army. So that allowed me and my younger brother to pursue golf at a very young age. So
Have you joined any club to play golf or?
I used to, sir. In school, I had a lot of time because it's a time-consuming game. So I played in army clubs wherever my father was posted in. But of late, I have not been able to stay in touch with the game.
Okay, my last question to you, the startup, we have asked you questions. But what do you think? The startup ecosystem today is really robust and vibrant, or it's dwindling?
No, sir, certainly it has improved. If we see the last decade performance, the startup ecosystem of India has really grown in terms of number of startups, the number of unicorns, or the amount of funding that startups have been raising, or even the enthusiasm of youngsters to do startups. So on all fronts, we have improved. But as you said, sir, certainly there are challenges that we need to tackle. For example, recently the funding has gone down in the last year. Then there are some unethical issues like Byju's came to light, using unethical practices to grow. So there are certainly challenges, but startup ecosystem has done really well in the last decade.
Can you think of areas in the government where startups can really help the government in running its business?
Certainly, sir. Even the company I worked at, Urban Company, we used to train our professionals, service professionals, and we used to liaison with Ministry of Skill Development to give them RPL certificate, which is recognition of prior learning. So this shows that government is also trying to build skill of the workforce, and it's win-win for both, basically, government and the startup.
Any area where government need not skill its own employees, but depend on a startup company to render its services and support system. Can you think of one or two areas of governance?
Certainly, sir. We can take the example of FarmGain. It's a startup in the AI sector, which is using artificial intelligence to improve farm productivity by measuring different water levels, nutrient levels in the soil, and using precision agriculture, basically. So
what do you mean by startup bubble?
The startup bubble is similar to the financial bubble that we had in 2008. So if too much funding flows into startups and valuations become inflated, so suddenly that bubble can burst one day, and that can disrupt the investor confidence and harm the startups, even the good ones. So that is a danger that we should be wary of.
Thank you very much, Roopak. Your interview is over. You may go now.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Sit down, Roopak.
Thank you, sir.
When is your interview, Roopak?
The 4th Jan.
Oh, 4th itself. It's very, very close by. So, which attempt is this for you?
5th, sir.
5th attempt.
Right.
Okay, and first interview?
Yes, sir.
How was today's experience?
So it was good. I felt comfortable.
Could you assess your performance quickly?
So from the feedback I received, I tried to be a little calmer and not just shoot off the block right after the question. That is what I was trying. Other than that, I felt the questions I answered well. The content was okay.
That is our feeling also. You answered very well all questions. Few suggestions only. You have to restrict your hand movement.
Right.
It comes naturally to one. I can understand that. But for those 30 minutes,
I'll
try to restrict your hand movement as far as practicable, and then try to keep both your legs slightly closer to each other, and keep both your hands on your chest. So that will itself will remind you that you don't have to move your hands too often. Once or twice is okay, but that is one. Then your communication skill is excellent, no doubt about it. You could communicate your ideas, your views, your point of view very clearly and confidently. So no issues on that. Certain places, again, it is slip of tongue only. Okay, I'll give you a few examples. So instead of saying I'll give you because it speaks of your authority, I'll give you a few examples. Can I give a few examples, sir? So that kind of a thing. I'm just by way of illustration, I'm telling you, if you are confronted with this kind of situation, try to be very humble, polite, isn't it? So being humble, polite and meek doesn't cost you anything, isn't it? But it gives you a lot of kudos. And pension, you had a viewpoint, is well appreciated. You are a student of economics. If it is supported by some data,
right?
How much because you see what you said, it came out just like that spontaneously. That in the defense sector, 70% of salary is paid to the employees. and 30% is left for the capital works. The salary is not the one element of your revenue expenditure. So many fuel is another big revenue expenditure, isn't it? So many other things are there. So you can't be segregating into two distinct compartments. One is salary, another is capital. So that kind of be very crisp.
Be more precise.
More precise, crisp. The less you speak on such things without knowing, then unwittingly you created this kind of an impression that this guy doesn't know the distinction between a revenue expenditure and a capital expenditure, that way. So keep that in mind. And if it is supported by some data, there's so much of amount and all that, and Government of India, when you say, it's better you board it with the Consolidated Fund of India, because you are a student of economics. That is why I am saying that the Consolidated Fund of India, it goes through that. And as it is, the burden is staggering on the government. Logical corollary may be that then why the state governments are going back to the pension scheme. Some of the state governments are. So we have to prepare for that also. Okay, why? It is not a good economics. Okay. Maybe a good politics, but it's not a good economics. That kind of a thing you have to. Otherwise, you are an excellent candidate. There is absolutely no doubt about this thing. You are from Mathura, no?
So my hometown is Lucknow.
It's shown on paper is Delhi. Paper which I don't know.
I've stayed in a lot of places. So
Mathura could be one place, because we saw somewhere that you spent some time in Mathura also. So this Gyanapavi issue, that is very important. Just refresh your this thing on Gyanapavi. And otherwise, beard.
I will clean shave, yes.
Okay, that is important. Go clean shaven, and you have a lot of qualities. You are a product of IIT. We asked you question on variety of issues, and you could try to address those issues to the best of your abilities, and very convincingly also. That is very good. Only thing is, somebody may try to grill you on golf and all that. Be prepared for that, and you can straightway start with a caveat, which you said also. You did say that my father was in the army, and that is why I got an opportunity. It's not that I used to clubber and I have a membership in a club and all that. It started like that, and it is like that. That's it. Otherwise, in the government sector, golf is in today's
seen in a bad light. Yes.
Yeah. So startup and all that, you are very clear about that. There also, if you can, as a student of economics, figure out the rate at which the startups succeed in India, that will also help you.
I'll do that.
How many startups are born and how many die, their natural death, and how many survive. And different stages of starting from pre-seed to series A, B, C. I mean, you must be aware, just for a way of reminder. Otherwise, have confidence in yourself, belief in yourself, stay cool, calm, composed. Before giving answers, collect your thoughts for a while, 2 seconds, 4 seconds, split seconds, and then you come out with the solutions or the ideas or the answers which you think is the best. Okay, you'll do. This is your 5th attempt, maybe you may succeed in this attempt only. Okay, all the best.
Thank you. Thank you.